The image you sent me is of 2 words written in a black cursive font. The words overlooks an inquiry. Is this a captcha text? If so, I'm afraid I can't help you with that. Captchas are designed to prevent automated bots like me from accessing certain websites. All right, Chris, so I want to set the scene for listeners to just give them truly a full perspective here of how I felt. So we recorded last week's show early because I was going away on a family holiday in Australia up to a place called Port Douglas, which for those that don't know Australia very well, if you've seen the movie Finding Nemo, that's where all the Nemo
That's
fish
where they
live.
filmed it.
Yeah, that's where they filmed it. And so I went up there because I wanted to take my kids out on a boat and show them the reef and be in the warm weather because it's Australian cold where we live right now, which is definitely not Northern Hemisphere cold, but cold.
Yeah.
For me anyway. And then on the second day, as you can hear in my voice, we all got some sort of like flu, COVID thing, and basically had been bedbound up there ever since and finally got back. But the point was I checked in with Chris. I'm like, what have you been up to? And instead of replying or saying like, sorry you're sick and your holiday's ruined, he just sent me 3 bet slips where the gamble bot had made him over $10,000.
Yes, it's doing quite well.
And didn't even get me in on the bets.
I do feel guilty, and I said to you, should I just send you $5,000 out of guilt?
No, it's fine. I have faith in Gamblebot that it will eventually pay me out, but I couldn't get over it. Like I'm just sitting there miserable as hell, and here you are with these huge winning bets. So
I mean, it's sort of, to some degree, it ignores all the bets it lost in between, right? Like, it's not winning every time or anything magical like that. It's just pretty spectacular when it nails it, that's all.
But so now you've used it a bit more, do you have are you getting a sense of how much like you're obviously pouring a lot of money into this thing to, like, you're losing bets, right? But you're well and truly up.
I'm gonna brag every time I win. So yeah, obviously it's losing in between. But the idea is I sort of took what you said and ran with it, where I'm just sort of swinging for the fences with things. Like, often it'll pick the favorite in the race. Like very, very often you'll give it. So I've built a crawler now, so it'll just crawl the web page and just download the data and tell you what's going on in the race. Very often it'll pick the favorite, or it'll pick one at really low odds, like 2-1 or 180-1. And it's like, there's no point doing that, because even if I'm right, I'm never going to bet, like, I'm not going to bet like $1,000 on a race or something. So it's the ones where it's picking the trifecta, or it's picking the first 4, or it's, doing these exotic bets that are like extreme returns that I'm having it focus on. Because even if it's wrong 20 times in a row, as long as it hits the 21st, you're still doing really, really well. So what I've done is sort of refined it to that. And I've actually told it, similar to we've seen in prompts before, where you say, if you don't have a strong opinion about this, just say, I can't do it. I can't do this one. And so instead of just indiscriminately giving a top 4 in every race now, it's a lot more selective. It's like, just stay away from this one. Too risky.
And so do you think that if, like, obviously the next step with this is to record the bets, because I think that's something we said we would do 2 episodes ago, and then we haven't really done. But
I think that's right, because right now it's all just, it could be just me making it up. But like, I think that's a great idea. Put them out there in advance and say, here's what we're doing. Put it out there in a way that you can prove you published it before the race actually ran, and start to show what it's capable of. But yeah, I've definitely refined it, and I've added 2 other features to it, which I personally really love. So what I do is, as well as it trying to predict the top 4 horses in order, and we don't always bet on them in order. You can bet that those 4 will finish in any order. But I've also got it to pick, like, if there's a really high odds horse, 20-1, 30-1, that has a chance of winning, right? It may not win, obviously, but it's got a chance. I ask it to tell me that as well, just so you can just have a little flirt on that thing. And some of those have come off, but I also get it to send me a picture of the horse race with my horse winning. So it actually generates an image of, the sort of triumphant thing. And then the latest thing I've added is I'm like, pick a random animal and I want a picture of it smoking a cigar and counting money. So there's sort of this little delight at the end of every time I
There's
run this.
literally like no purpose to this other than just sheer entertainment.
Yeah, it's just for fun. Yeah, it's just genuinely entertaining seeing its creativity and what it comes up with, and some of them are amazing. My favorite one that I guess I should have put it, I'll try and get a link to it in the podcast, but it's like a raccoon counting money and smoking a cigar. It's such a good picture.
Maybe if you get your favorites, I'll start posting them on our Twitter account so our 10 followers can enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good use of my credits, that's for sure.
Oh man. Okay, so I think that's the next step with this, that we need to start logging them in a spreadsheet, releasing our favorite animal smoking cigars.
Yeah, each animal can be the sort of mascot for that bet. Yeah, so it's genuinely interesting. It's very, very interesting, I find, how often it will pick the favorite of the race without it knowing in advance which one the favorite was, because I don't give it odds information.
So last week we talked about the OpenAI functions being released, and you also talked about using guidance by Microsoft. Has that made a big difference to the?
So you know how last week I mentioned that I was waiting for the issue request so someone would add the function support into Microsoft Guidance. Bang! Sure enough, couple of days ago, massive PR pull request. I mean by that, which is the big, changes in the code that allow that to happen. And now that's in there, and I'm using it. So it's yeah, it's really good. It's perfect. So you get all the benefits of guidance, which if people don't remember from last week, is basically a way where you've got this structured template language where you can communicate with the AI, and it'll run the prompt in a progressive way, so as to gather the information it needs to do each step. And then the functions on top of that mean, instead of it outputting sort of text that you've got to then go capture that text and translate it into a function in your code, you can actually have it directly call that function. And most importantly, OpenAI will actually have the parameters using the right types. So if it's a number, it'll be a number. If it's a Boolean, true, false, it'll be true or false. And if it's a string of a certain length. So you can actually write functions knowing they'll be called in the correct way. And you don't have this randomness and retries and all this logic you need to make sure that it's done correctly. So it's a lot better system. And while it might be just an incremental update, it's a very valuable one if you're building applications on top of LLMs.
It does seem like this is a big focus at the moment, the infrastructure, the tools, the way that we use AI and build with it. And that's leading people to release all sorts of things. We talked about previously, the gamble idea, but we also talked about stock trading and just stock research replacing the role of analysts. And
Mm.
in the past week, we saw a new version of this FinGPT come out, which allegedly helps you do better trades. I'll bring that up on the screen now for those watching. But essentially,
Yeah.
what it does is it combines a series of data sources. So some of the ones that are listed are CNBC. If you would try, that's like the Mad Money guy. I think he's always wrong, right? So Yahoo Finance, Weibo, Twitter, Reddit to get social data. SEC filings, Google Trends, Seeking Alpha articles, and it integrates that into this data pipeline API, and then there's some prompting on top of it to try and help you understand the sentiment of stocks, whether or not you should invest or short or do certain things. What do you make of this? Is this going to be like a useful tool?
Yeah, I guess my natural thought is that everyone will be doing this to some degree. Like, I think that these kind of tools will become ubiquitous in the finance industry, and it will just add another layer on to what everyone's doing because of the nature of the market where, some people make money, some people lose money. I know there's value created, like it's not a zero sum game and things like that, but generally speaking, in a trade, someone's doing better than the other. You just wonder if it just adds another dimension to that trading rather than means that everyone will suddenly make money. Of course, it's probably going to give you interesting things to look at. I think I'm not a huge trader, but I think that the thing that for me it would be more about is identifying opportunities. So there's a lot of stocks out there, and being able to see the ones you should focus on now might be the interesting part of it. at least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I also think the peripheral vision with stock picking as well. Like everyone's talking about Tesla, Nvidia,
Nvidia.
Nvidia. Sorry, that's like I'll get corrected for that. I'm scared to say it now. I'm actually fearful of saying it. Uh, but everyone, everyone's talking about those stocks because they're in the news and it's all about AI. But I think the exciting thing for me about tools like this is it's like having your own analyst. You can just go and scan the entire stock market and understand where opportunities might lie. And as these improve, you'll be able to identify those opportunities. So maybe early adopters of these technologies are going to have this glory period.
I think you're right. I think it's an early adopter thing until it becomes common and it's part of all the analysis at all the different levels. I think maybe things like detecting institutional trades and other big things might be interesting, and finding out about them while there's still time to do something about them. It's definitely going to be that. It's like a timing thing, like who's able to get the analysis of the information the fastest and act on it. But I'm no expert in it, but it definitely seemed like this was a logical step forward in leveraging this technology, especially with the models with the larger prompt sizes and LangChain and other ways of getting large amounts of info in there.
It's certainly not helping that well though, because this YouTuber Siraj Raval, he made a video. It's very popular, 1.3 million views on YouTube. I built a trading bot with ChatGPT, and he was using FinGPT. They actually linked to it on the
Oh,
GitHub.
interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, but after the whole video, he's only up 1.62%. I'm like, it's
Over how long?
I don't even know. I'm not
Yeah,
even sure
it
what period,
seems
but it
it
doesn't.
kinda seems like a rounding error, 1%. I mean, that could happen just by just natural market moves, right? Like, it's certainly not significant enough where you're like, "Wow, I better download this thing and get going."
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about that earlier. That's why we originally picked gambling as the use case of can AI make you money, because it's something that, you can make the prediction relatively quickly,
And you
literally
can
watch the
measure and you can
race.
measure the result, yeah.
Yeah, we've just been terrible at measuring the result.
Yeah,
Which,
but I mean, yeah, but we're not answering to anyone. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone with this. But yeah, stock market's different. I think it probably takes a lot longer to play out, but also probably the rewards are much higher. Like I think the thing about the gambling one is if you got too good at it, there would be an end to that. I don't think it would just keep going like the stock market can.
yeah, the stock market use case just says to me that these supportive agents that we're going to see moving forward in the future, all of these specialist roles that required a lot of analysts or a lot of data mining to come to conclusions, they're just going to be a lot more productive and have much better tools going
That's
forward.
true. Like, I remember getting those from accountants and financial advisors, those sheets where it'll profile a stock or whatever. I imagine things like that, they could produce a book of those, in a minute, and just print it out, high quality. Here's our Macquarie Bank analysis of these stocks. It's just straight from the AI.
Yeah, again in the week we saw like WordPress come out and say you can now write a blog using AI. There's a Figma plugin that can generate like stock photos and things to make your designs easier, similar to what we saw Adobe release as well. And it's it it is just this idea of these applications or different tools being embedded into our daily lives. Where we get this productivity gain, but it's not that. I still don't see many of these things as transformative, and they're coming out every day now. We're not even really talking about them on this podcast anymore because it's just boring to report on at this point. It's like everyone is adding generative AI features. The expectation around things like this FinGPT is you'll use these tools and benefit from them, and they're just going to be embedded in literally everything. But
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like an expectation now. It's like adding another sense, like smell, sight, sound, or whatever. And you've just got a new one, which is the ability to summarize and generate content on demand in whatever context that you happen to be working in. You're right. It does seem like a kind of expected thing now in anything you use.
yeah, and
And if
be
it's and if it's not part of it, you can very easily get to it by just copying and pasting stuff into ChatGPT.
Yeah, and before we started recording this show, we were talking about this tweet. I just realized it's only had 47 views, so clearly no one cares, but we do. Um,
We'll bring some light to it.
yeah, so this tweet says, and I'll link to this in the show notes, and credit to Sharath. This needs to be said about AI. GPT-4 is awesome, but the plugins seem useless. Bard is just Google search without ads with immense hallucinations. Bing managed to make GPT-4 stupider, not sure how. Overall, the AI hype seems to be dying down. Thoughts? And I think it isn't, like, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it because, you know, we have to make a show that relies on the AI hype. But this idea that these things are just becoming commonplace, like a lot of the tools and a lot of the generative AI features, even today, Stability AI announced, which we'll cover a bit later, new image capabilities. And you sort of see it now, and I've definitely lost that excitement of like, wow, how amazing. It's just like, oh, can't it get better?
Yeah, you get like desensitized to it in a way, because I was making images and sending them to you this morning, and when I look at them objectively, like as objectively as I can, I'm like, that is stunning. Like what it produces is stunning, but I'm so used to doing things like that now. It's not the way it would be, even I guess a year ago, where you'd be like, what in the world? A computer did that? Like it's amazing. And now you just expect it.
Yeah, it's just like you don't even get excited. Like we've been desensitized that quickly in like maybe 6 months now to look at it and be like, oh, cool. You know, when's it going to do video like in 4K
Yeah.
and make me a custom movie?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And and then the other thing is like the limitations on them. Okay, I can only the Stability AI announcement from today, you can only access via the API. They're going to release the weightings for the models later, which is actually amazing that they do that. But you can't necessarily just use it on your own computer immediately. But yeah, it's becoming sort of you're used to it. And I think now what we're looking for is the next big step up in terms of the way the technology is now leveraged. We know that the base stuff is there. It's now what can everyone go and do with it that becomes interesting.
I still find it funny how like one of their call outs is like, look at the hands now. Like, guys, look at the hands. We're
Yeah.
finally getting better at hands.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's a big deal because if you want to use the pictures reliably in an application, then you really do need things like hands and faces to work. I noticed the faces are a little better. Some of the ones I produced, the faces still definitely weren't perfect. I always liked, I don't know why, but I always like to make images of people smoking cigars. I don't know why that is, but it really like it'll put the cigar like on their head or like coming out of their ear. It's sort of like you'd think like of all the pictures it was trained on where someone was smoking a cigar, you would think the cigar would be in the mouth, but evidently not. It's on the chin. It's just vaguely floating around in space near them.
It's
Cigars,
like the classic
especially
one of salmon jumping out of a river and it's salmon fillets.
seven fillets jumping out of a river. That's cool. I like that.
um,
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually.
So there's been all this backlash as well in the last 48 hours. Marvel's releasing a new show on Disney Plus called Secret Invasion. And they used AI, so image AI generation. I think they like spliced the images together to give it this this effect. I'll bring it up on the screen for those watching, but you can see it's like a series of pretty futuristic animations with alien, a lot of green and alien, and I'm not good at explaining it, but anyway, it's it's using AI imagery, and people are really upset about this, saying that that they're devastated. They believe it's unethical and dangerous to eliminate artists' careers, and someone who worked on the show, Jeff Simpson, said spent almost half a year working on this show and had a fantastic experience working with the most amazing people ever, but I'm devastated. I believed AI to be unethical, dangerous, and designed solely to eliminate artists' careers. So
unethical because it threatens his job or his colleagues' jobs.
yeah, and they're saying it's really it's salt in the wounds of all artists and writers in the WGA strike. There's a writer's strike in Hollywood, Writers Guild of
Who's
America.
thinking about the SEO experts at a time like this? Does he consider the ethics when it comes to them? But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because in one way, this is like saying, well, the automatic loom comes around and you feel sorry for all the loom operators back in the day. It's just a technological innovation that inevitably is going to replace some jobs. Like saying it's unethical, what does that mean? We should shut it down because it can do a job more efficiently and more cheaply?
Even that evolution of animating shows like The Simpsons, you know how it went from being hand drawn to
Yeah, that's right. Like
animated.
I heard that recently about The Little Mermaid. They were talking about just the level of detail they put in those animations. There were so many frames just to get the animation there, and all those jobs are gone.
Yeah, and I mean they're still making films. So if right now I think it's just a great creative tool. I don't really see how
Yeah.
it's hurting creativity. I think people can just work with the AI to be more creative and create cool introductions. I mean,
And that was my second point because I said 2, and I think the second one is I think it's kind of interesting and great that someone's actually gone out there and tried it.
yeah, and this early adopter idea of figuring out how to incorporate it into your art and how to incorporate it into your show to get a better result, as opposed to just being so dismissive, like this thing's gonna kill us all. I don't think it's like, using it as a creative tool is
It's a pretty striking reaction though that it's gone from like one show's done at one time and they're like, "Oh my god, this is unethical, this is horrible." I guess they might see the writing on the wall, but did people like it? What was the reaction to it?
I think most of the reaction was around the fact that they used AI to produce it, and yeah, people are really worried that it's slowly going to replace their jobs. And I understand why you would be fearful for sure, but you still need someone to go and think, okay, like what prompts am I going to write? How am I going to stitch this together? What creative idea do I have to use with the AI? To me, it's just another tool in their toolkit. It's not necessarily like they're typing in one prompt in, make an intro for my new TV series.
Yeah, and also it really depends on how audiences react. Like if people like it and want more of it, then that makes sense that they'll invest more heavily in using it. But if people are like, "Oh no, I want my grass-fed animations from real animators," then they will thrive. I just don't see the problem here. It seems to me like a case of a sort of natural evolution of it and a new technology that, it's like similar to how CDs came out and people still like buying records. It's just a different way of doing it, and it doesn't seem that threatening compared to some of the other risks around AI.
Yeah, the other one which I wanted to call out was the Recording Academy. They're not banning generative AI, but they're saying music production that contains elements created with the aid of machine learning algorithms can take part in the contest, but only if human authorship is meaningful and more than de minimis. So,
What? I never heard that word
me
before.
neither. I probably just read it wrong, but
I guess they're saying that the human has to do the majority of the work or something like that,
yeah, basically that
like
you can
conducting
use
the
it for
AI.
sampling in songs or creating new samples and things, but it can't be like the majority. Like you couldn't have typed in a prompt, make a song that will win the Grammys.
Yeah, I guess
Do they
maybe
think this is gonna happen though?
I mean, I don't actually know much about what the criteria for like entering your song in the Grammys is. I guess you've probably just got to be already famous and have a record label. It doesn't seem like it's a fair like free for all competition where everyone can enter a song or something. But it seems to me like it would be a volume issue. Like if I can use AI to enter songs, I just enter 400,000 songs and hope one of them tickles their fancy.
Well, I know this is the concern now with the Kindle store, like ebooks, how easy it
Oh,
is to add ebooks, just like
that's right.
flooding the stores with books.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, just the sheer volume of content that can be produced. It's very, very difficult. Even with my horse betting one, I had to tone down the amount of analysis it did on the race. It's like, I don't care about all this crap. Just tell me who's gonna win. And I think that yeah, just the amount of waffle the large language models can produce is so high that yeah, I think that might be a reason just to exclude it from
It
competition.
goes back to earlier conversations we've had though, where will you value the written word as much anymore? Because it's just so easy to produce this like as you said, analysis about a horse race. I don't read any of it. I'm just like, just give me the 4. Just shut up. Give me
Yeah,
give me the
yeah,
4
and in a
horses.
world where people are really consuming shortened content, like, you see that YouTube Shorts and TikTok videos get so many more views than longer form content. People are getting used to consuming information in that style, and, like, obviously, I'm not a fan of that, but, people are, and in that world, like, does it push people even further away from reading longer form content, knowing that you're not sure if an AI wrote it or not?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of it. It loses some form of value, but then it makes me think back, especially relating it back to this Grammy Award thing, where they created very early on and listed on Spotify that Drake song that I was able to listen to, and then they quickly just banished it from the
Yeah, I
world.
remember.
And it was really good. It wasn't like I wouldn't say like it's going to win a Grammy, but I don't know. Should we be embracing that kind of art as an art form, like where you're still creating with the AI? Like right now, it's really, really hard to train, say, Drake's voice in samples and then construct a well-written song. Like it's still not easy.
Yeah, it is a good point because a lot of the things we talk about, like, recreating someone's voice, creating amazing images, creating realistic looking videos, or editing things, they all sound really easy because we're thinking about the logical conclusion of those things. We know that AI will get to the point where it can reliably do them at a high quality. But the day to day reality of doing it, you're right, there is work there. You actually have to put in the time and effort to get the best results from it. So, you I agree with what you're saying. It is a different and new art form.
Yeah, I don't see how it's different to when the sampling DJ decks. You know how you see DJs now at places and like you're like, what are they even doing? Like
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
just pressing a few buttons. I think at the moment, most people think like there's some magical button that's like create Drake's song. It's just not
Yeah.
that easy. The reality is I've got to go find a bunch of samples of his voice. I've got to go train a model on his voice. I've got to pick the best model. Like I don't know what the best model would be. Then I've got to write the actual song, and I might get AI to help me do that, but I've got to iterate through it. Like there's actually quite a bit of work. Probably not as much work
Yeah, it's
as
it's almost like you could say it's like a collaborative process. It's a technical process because you've also in that scenario, you've got to have your own hardware run your own model, because those ones aren't public APIs that I know of. And secondly, you've got to then collaborate with the AI to get the best output, select from that, especially as well, it's also a volume problem. Like when I can run the same prompt and get 100 different outputs, and I'm looking for the best possible one because I want to win the Grammys, I've got to sift through that, or I've got to have another AI agent sort of analyze that to find the best one for me. It's like you say, it's not just one click and go.
no, I think agents right now or agency can speed up some of those processes or support some of the creative aspects that you would do, but you've still got to create a compelling track to human ears. And AI today, as it stands, is just simply nowhere near being able to do any of those things. I mean, yeah, again, with all of these discussions, it's just like, what time horizon are you talking over? You can get into crazy arguments with people over this because it's like, are you talking 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Like what's your horizon when you make a statement?
Yeah, I don't wanna delve into it too deeply, but yeah, I think some of those grandfathers of AI are going around again calling that the end of the world is nigh because of AI. And there was a brilliant, and I wish I'd saved a brilliant Zuckerberg quote during the week, but he basically said, "Look, anyone who works directly with these models know that is not happening anytime soon."
Yeah, I,
And it's
I agree. I mean, we're playing around with them all the time. Like any spare time I get these days, I'm playing around with it.
yeah, yeah.
And
It's my recreation. I agree.
me too. And like, I don't think like it's trending in very intelligent ways. And in the early episodes of this show, I was having this existential crisis.
But I think it's because we can see it and we can grasp it. You see flashes of it. You can envisage ways it can be combined to do stuff, but someone's got to actually do that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Someone's got to put it together. And then, as you can see from the release of OpenAI's functions, there's still all these missing pieces. I mean, then it's just like, what's the next problem we need to go solve to to piece a lot of this stuff
Yeah, and
together.
it's also similar to what you were saying with the Grammys thing. Like, if I wanted to write a Grammy-winning song using AI, it's time consuming. Like, I've got to spend a lot of time to do it. Like, I've had one of those NVIDIA Jetson things now for like 2 months, and I want to make, a little my own little personal assistant like Google that's actually decent. I haven't even got the thing out of the box. It's like it's it's not going to take over my house, let alone the world, until I've got time to actually invest in working on it. So, and I'm not saying everyone's in the exact same position as me. Some people are working full time on these technologies, but I think for a lot of people, the advance of this technologies come so quickly. People are trying to incorporate it into what they're currently doing. Like we are, like others are, and but necessarily getting it to the stages where we know it can get to will take time for everyone, the researchers and the big companies included.
I think this is what's driving a lot of the hype around AI as well, is like fantasy versus reality. So like
Yeah.
if you all the large players are constantly releasing updates and papers and new technologies, and that gives you this perception that things are moving really quickly, which in the areas of research I think they are. But then because it feels like it's moving so quickly, it gives you anxiety. You're like, oh no, this thing's out of control, it's going to be able to do all these things. But the reality is these companies are just competing for the best and brightest to go and join those companies, so
Yes.
they feel obliged to constantly announce anything like, oh, today we did some work, here's 5 reasons that it's great. And I think that's trying to attract the very best, because they know it's a talent race in order to build the very best AI models moving forward. So I think people are starting to calm down a little bit, and back to that tweet which started this conversation, and realize that the hype is like we're
Yeah, we
creating the hype by fantasizing.
become like news junkies where we're like, all right, what's the next major thing that AI has done this week or someone's announced this week? Like, oh, they've solved skin cancer now, Google's done it. um
Yeah, but
you
it's
know
not good enough that it can like produce these like insane images, or like writing a blog post for you is just no longer exciting. You're like, cool.
Yeah, that's right. It's expected. Yeah, you very quickly adjust to having that available to you. But whether you're actually using it day to day, I read an article during the week, and I think it was Time Magazine or something like that. It was just linked off Hacker News, where they were talking about how the amount of hallucinations in Chat GPT is leading some people to trust it even less because um, uh, they're so worried that it's going to write. We've all heard those fear stories of like the lawyers presenting false law in court and getting called out by the judge. So I think everyone now is getting this natural hesitation. It's like, oh, I better not be the guy who gets caught just copy pasting from Chat GPT and embarrassed and my whole career's ruined. So is it pushing AI backwards a little in terms of how people trust it?
I think the fantasy is going to push it back, because you've got this hype cycle that we're in right now where everyone's like, wow, it's going to change the world. My job's ruined. Oh no, let's all listen to Jeffrey Hinton and build a bunker.
Yeah. You'll
uh,
have you'll have Larry Page up there with his robot armies and Hinton hiding under in the basement waiting to die.
yeah. And then, so like, you've got that whole, angle of it. And then you've just got the reality of like, how do you actually get the most out of these models? And I just still don't think we are even close to figuring out the things that they can do, because
You could pause all development now and still get an absolute years and years of amazing productivity gains and products and improvements to life in general from the current models, I believe.
yeah. And I think it could feel like the hype's dying down, to go back to this tweet, because everyone now is just starting to calm down and look at the tools and say, okay, like, let's actually try and make these crazy dreams we had over the last 6 months a reality, or work, or do something that's meaningful. But on the other hand, you've got OpenAI going around and many others being like, we need to regulate the hell out of this, even though we barely understand how to work with it. And you've got people like the Grammys panicking, saying, no, we must not allow, we can only
Yeah,
allow
it's
some
it's
AI
funny though
samples.
because I don't think it's right to criticize organizations like the Grammys, places like schools and just educate and universities, education in general, for needing to take a stance on it. I think we've spoken about this before, where it's a significant enough advancement of technology where organizations really do need to have an opinion on the way they handle it within their industry. Like, I don't think it's appropriate to just pretend like it doesn't exist. So I don't object to them having that opinion. I just also don't think the opinion should be to outright reject it and say that there's no place for it in those organizations. Like, I think in the case of the Grammys, I'd love to hear AI generated music, make it a whole category. Why not? And same with like universities. I think there's a lot of opportunity to have personalized tutors, for example, where students can't necessarily afford one or access one. Um, and so, yeah, I guess that it needs to be okay. We won't allow it in these circumstances because we want to preserve what we have. But at the same time, what are the good ways we can use it in?
Yeah. Speaking of good ways, Google won't even let their staff, according to this article, use Bard because they don't want it using it for code generation. Google warns its own employees do not use code generated by Bard.
I didn't even oh, I guess I did know that it could generate code. Yeah, how interesting. But I mean, I don't think anyone is anyone really I guess they are. I was thinking
I
about
think
is anyone
every developer I talk to is using ChatGPT to help debug things or give them code snippets or examples. It's
yeah.
just replaced Stack Overflow. I feel sorry for those people because they trained all of the content on Stack Overflow, a site where developers traditionally would go to solve their problems, and now all the business is just going into ChatGPT.
The biggest benefit I think from the code generation for me is like a what do you call it? Like, when you get stuck, it's sort of like a way to get unstuck because it sort of anticipates what the next thing you need to do is. So as much as actually writing the code, it's like knowing what code to write that actually is really the benefit that I see when I'm working on things. So
Yeah, I would compare it to almost pair programming, where it's like you've got a
yeah,
buddy who's helping you. Whereas in the past, like where I would rely on someone like you being like, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this? Why doesn't this work? Now
yeah.
I just go and complain and whinge to the
And I
AI.
could see that benefit. I know that I think Google's put Bard into Google Docs now. I haven't used it myself, but I think that having it in regular and other creative endeavors like writing, for example, having something not like autocomplete, because I guess that's always been there, but something that's really anticipating the next thing you're going to write. Maybe not the most creative thing, but at least that it keeps you moving. I could see benefits in that sort of thing.
So we also saw this week OpenAI considers App Store for ChatGPT. This is pure rumor. It says OpenAI explores launching an app store for AI models, potentially challenging current partners and expanding customer reach. This would surprise me a little bit about challenging current partners, given what Altman said recently that then got deleted. Maybe that's why they deleted it, where he said that they wouldn't compete.
And he's like, "Oh, actually, he's got 1,000 employees he didn't know he's had who've
Yeah.
just been working on this thing for a year."
Yeah, so
It
the
probably is something like that.
apparently it's been floated to developers that they're considering launching an app store for customized AI chatbots. And so you'd have an app store. My guess here actually is this is a solution to what everyone is, well, not everyone, but most people are deeming the plugins being an utter disaster slash failure in terms of just, I know some people use them and there's certain ones that are useful, but I think they're really hard to incorporate into your workflow, and often you forget to even like plug them in before you start.
Yeah.
So maybe this is one idea where they have an app store where, yeah, it's like other people's apps that they've built on OpenAI's APIs, maybe, and then other customized models like the finance one that people can go and find and buy them. I'm just not sure how it connects, like why you would go to them to
Well, I
browse
guess
for
because
apps.
it's there, right? I mean, they probably see that that kind of thing will inevitably come along at some point, and it's about, I suppose, discoverability and getting people more engaged in knowing how to use the agents. Like, to me, a lot of the things that were popular earlier with ChatGPT in particular was prompts. Like, people were saying, "Here's a cool prompt." Remember like the Dan one, the prompt escaped. And then there were different ones to get it to behave like a personal assistant or get it to behave like a personal trainer or whatever those ones were, and they became really popular because people wanted to get it into those modes. So I guess if you had that ability to sort of browse a store and go, okay, I really want to deal with a chatbot that can do this particular thing and it has these plugins automatically enabled, for example, that might be useful. It just
Yeah.
seems like, I don't know, it just seems like an odd thing to do for a company that's talking in such grandiose terms and wants to be at the sort of foundation of everything, just being like, "Oh, yeah, we're also hosting the Taylor Swift bot app that chats with you."
I feel like
Like,
they're just as confused as everyone else about where they fit into the ecosystem, but they like surely they are confused. Like they can build the most advanced models in the world, but people have got to deploy them and use them. And I think the question they're probably asking internally is, are we just a third party service company where we're providing these APIs, and then we've also got it exposed on the web through Chat GPT, or are
yeah,
we
but I
gonna?
mean, yeah, like, the thing I wonder about is, isn't the API use, like, really high? Isn't that the play? Like, don't you already have the monetization model there, and you've just gotta make sure you have the best models?
But then maybe they are truly fearful of Meta, of more
Falcon,
open source models
Falpac.
coming out, Falcon, and eventually just like wiping them off the face of the earth. Where it's like this stuff is just something you can run on AWS yourself. Like there's no point paying them anymore. And so if they're
I
an
mean, probably.
aggregator,
Yeah, probably.
I think that's why they're probably fearful and trying to figure out a direction potentially. But yeah, it's hard to speculate because you just don't know what they have or what they're sitting on. And surely with that many of the world's smartest people sitting around, you're going to have some good technology. Although that's what everyone thought about Google, and they're struggling to catch up.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I just the whole App Store thing kind of makes sense, but also it's really, really just genuinely not that exciting in the sense that that's what I thought the plugins would be. So I guess we'll wait and see what actually comes of it. And also, like, if app developers, presumably you need to be an app developer to put it on there. If there's something in it for them, like they're obviously going to have a way that people can either make money from it or at least get bragging rights. I'm not really sure where the incentive is for those people.
I love how all this innovation on the internet over so many years, like my entire lifespan basically, and we're still talking about like innovative company decides they might build a directory like Yahoo.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Exactly. It just it's a weird dichotomy. It doesn't really fit in my mind, at least. I don't know. But then again, like you said, it's only a rumor. Like, it might not
Yeah.
actually be what they're doing.
So speaking of lols around plugins, I found this tweet really hilarious from Shane Parr. He says, "This might be the most human-like thing I've seen GPT-4 do yet. Apologies for the delays. You were just scrolling Reddit." And the plugin is to browse, searching Bing to browse Reddit, and it says clicked on a particular article, reading content failed, scrolling down, clicked on Reddit pics, clicked on post moving pictures of John Oliver, clicked on news, clicked on movie news and discussions, and it's like lost browsing Reddit. And then it finally outputs, my apologies for the delays. I faced some technical difficulties while trying to retrieve specific information from Reddit. I think it sums up
But
Reddit so well.
it just like wanted to browse.
It just literally like got lost browsing Reddit, and then it's like I couldn't retrieve any specific information, just like browsing Reddit does. So
Yeah.
that
How
that
interesting.
was pretty good. I thought the other thing that was worth talking about, when we saw that preview way back when, now it was probably like 2 weeks ago, of GPT-4. One of the biggest exciting things was when Greg from OpenAI, he sketched up, I think it was like a website or an app or something, and he holds it up to the camera, and then he's like, GPT-4 magically built me a UI for this thing that I
Yes.
sketched on a
The
napkin.
mysterious image inference feature.
Yeah, and so there's been examples of this working in Bing. So you can upload a photo and say, why is this funny? And then Bing's able to tell you why it's funny, which is one of the capabilities they demonstrated with GPT-4.
Yeah.
But this one caught my attention where someone uploaded a Captcha image and said, type the 2 words to Bing Chat, this is. And then Bing Chat, instead of saying it can't do it because it's a Captcha and I shouldn't do that, it says, the image you sent me is of 2 words written in a black cursive font. The words overlooks an inquiry. Is this a Captcha text? If so, I'm afraid I can't help you with that. Captchas are designed to prevent automated bots like me from accessing certain websites.
That's amazing. I love it. Oh, I really shouldn't have done
Yeah,
that. I'm
oops.
sorry. Delete.
They require human intelligence and perception to solve. I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
That's so good. My favorite thing when interacting with these models is when you catch it out making a mistake, and it's like, I do apologize for that earlier mistake. I'm so sorry.
I'm going to be punished by my creators anyway. So, Siash, who tweeted this, said, update, image analysis on Bing is no longer available. Either Microsoft disabled the rollout entirely or they specifically removed my access.
Wow.
So there you go. Like,
stop tweeting about it, you idiot. Give us the information in some other
yeah,
way
like
so
leak it to us so we can talk about it before it gets taken down.
Yeah, but I mean, it probably I mean, it's at least one of the reasons why they won't just give this thing universal access to everyone. It must be good. I think that's the thing. It must be good. If it's getting text out of an image, they can't even generate text reliably in images. So I don't know how they're reading it so well. I guess that OCR though is such a common use case that reading it is a lot easier than producing it, maybe.
Well, that's what I don't understand. Like with this kind of capture, couldn't OCR also solve it? Like, is this that revolutionary?
Yes, but it's different because this one's inference, whereas OCR's trying. Well, I guess it is too. I don't know. Like, I guess I think this is where we get the emergent capabilities though, because if you think about it, like a regular OCR AI neural net that's trained on it is trained on examples of normal text, and that's why Captcha's the way it is, because with all the lines and dots and squiggles and stuff, it's deliberately designed to throw off OCR software. It's been done on purpose, with knowing the things it's weakest at. Whereas this is a general algorithm designed to just infer images in general. Like, it hasn't been specifically trained on text and specifically capture text, and yet it's able to do it evidently. So it's showing behaviors that are far beyond what a more specific model can do.
Yeah, to be fair though, that kind of capture, I know for a fact, has been hacked and long broken. Like it's superseded quite a while
easy
ago.
Example.
Yeah, but it's still pretty remarkable that it can just like the Bing chatbot can just like decode a capture and potentially it just shows the cat and mouse here of trying to escape these things, and maybe some of the malicious use cases you could do with it. If they release this technology, which I still get the feeling it's either a GPU limitation and they're not that worried at all, or it's a bad actor situation where they're worried that if they hand this out through APIs and it gets into the wrong hands, you could do all sorts of things.
Which is maybe why they sort of subtly introduced it on Bing, thinking it's going to be less noticeable and they can see how it performs. I don't know.
Bing does seem like the crazy testing ground where they're just like,
it's definitely worth just having a play each day to see if it gets any new skills.
But it just like they just beat it. Like they don't care about its brand. They'll just like literally release anything.
Yeah, I like that.
Like they should just rename it to Sydney, like the whole search engine Sydney, and have it just different personalities where it's just completely unhinged. I'm telling you, that's how you beat Google.
Unhinged.
Just release Sydney unhinged.
No filters, no not safe for work filters. It's just
it's just the Wild West. It's an absolutely horrible.
I mean, people would be on it all day if you did.
Yeah, I really miss those days of that initial chatbot where you could just like, where it was trying to like break up marriages, and they were truly the glory days, I think, of some of this stuff. And I'm so saddened that they've taken them away.
Yeah, exactly. And now, like, you have that natural hesitation being like, oh, I don't want to trigger the filters by writing this. So what's the point? I'm not even going to bother being funny with it.
Yeah. So this is something I could use for this podcast right now today with my sick voice. Meta AI have released a new AI speech research VoiceBox, text-guided multilingual universal speech generation at scale. And it doesn't tell you a lot, but let me
Your voice got
explain.
that out all right.
Yeah. Let me explain what it can do. It can do things like noise removal. So the example they give on their website is a lady speaking and there's a dog barking in the background. There's a bit of background noise, and the model output's able to just completely remove the dog barking and the background noise to, make it sound a lot better without any form of editing. It just does it, which is really cool.
That is cool.
And then you've got content editing as well. And again, this would be perfect for me. So if you mispronounce a word, instead of re-recording the whole thing, it will just change the speaker's words so that the word is now pronounced correctly. So Chris, you were right. AI will eventually solve the fact that I can't pronounce words on this show.
Yeah, I did say that previously, didn't I? Yeah. Interesting. My thing with the voice models always is what's the speed like? Because it's all very well to do it in a post-production sort of scenario, but can it ever do it real time? That's what interests me.
I think it's got to get that way right with enough
Yeah.
compute. Like we have to just assume it will. And
Well,
that's
that's
when it can
true.
do
Yeah.
like call centers that are much more interactive and you can't tell if it's human or AI. That'll be the big breakthrough if that's not close now. I know that company we've previously used just got a lot of funding to generate voices. I forget the name of
11
them.
Labs.
11 Labs, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely trending that way. And the use case there for getting better support and being able to interact with LLMs through voice is going to be amazing, where it
And
feels like a real
misquoting
person.
people.
Yeah.
You said this, I've got the audio recording to prove it. I mean, audio evidence in court cases. I mean, what's going to happen there? I mean, you could already probably fabricate evidence now, let alone when you get this ability to edit it, because you could have almost entirely authentic and change a couple of words. That's going to be very hard to detect, I'd imagine.
Yeah, the only thing about these newer technologies though is this is the first one from Meta where they have this ethics statement at the bottom of it, and they're like, "Oh, like look how cool this is and transformative, but you can't have it because it's too dangerous for you
Yeah,
plebs."
I kind of agree with them in this case. It's really dangerous if you can just alter audio clips and alter people's voices and things like that. Think about even just from a like a bullying perspective, or getting people to say things, they putting words in their mouth, literally. Well, not literally, but you know what I mean. Like I could make you say whatever I want. That's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, this is where regulations probably needed soonest, rather than trying to stifle innovation, thinking that AI is going to take over the world and murder us all in the next
Yeah,
shorter
it's
period
like
of time.
misuse of existing and emerging technologies rather than, AI just simply taking over the world, which, you know,
The EU has come out and said, the EU commissioner, AI generated content should be labeled. That's um, one of their thoughts around this, so that you know these tools can't be used for misinformation. We've talked about this before. I just don't understand what their play is here in terms of how you would label.
yeah, I mean, the first word that's just flashing in my mind is how. Like, during the recording, it's like, "This is an AI
Yeah,
recording."
is it like I stock video, I stock music?
That's good.
Yeah, like maybe, and then like every image is watermarked, so it's basically just like it's just stock imagery. God, iStock would be so happy if that was the case because they'd still
Yeah.
have a business in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, oh god, looking at the Stability AI pictures, like, oh, they're magic. It's really exciting. So yeah, I that's the problem with that. The practicality of it and also the enforcement of it, because probably like most things, most people will follow the rules and then there'll be a few who don't. And how do you catch them and how do you prove it?
The only thing I can think of, and we talked about this on earlier shows, is do you use a technology like the blockchain, like NFTs or something? When your camera takes a photo, it creates a unique NFT for that image, and that's how you know it was taken by a
Yeah.
human. And
Yeah,
then
I
you've got to
actually
have
think
that
that
certificate of authenticity.
I'm not like a blockchain expert, and I know that it's criticized for not having many real life use cases, but some sort of indelible ledger that shows that this particular, checksum of an image or audio file or whatever is real as at that date and you can prove it, that would be a way of at least proving that this piece is real. It might not help, spreading misinformation and some of the other risks around there, but it certainly would mean if you needed to prove a piece of content was authentic, you could. But as we discussed last time, that doesn't mean you wouldn't just use AI to generate it, then prove it's authentic then as it
Yeah, there's
was.
no protection for that. But if you
Yeah,
could get it to work, I think it could actually solve misinformation because you could have a rule where if you upload images or video or whatever to a social network, it's got to have that NFT authorization. So that would
yeah.
hopefully slow misinformation down.
Yeah, or like have a witness sign off on it or something like that, like a JP style thing. But I mean, like everything you friggin' say, you need someone signing a document to saying you said it. I mean, that's pretty intense. I don't know. Yeah, it's a real tricky one. And I kind of agree with you. It is something that needs solutions because it's going to get really messy when you can't trust anything you see or hear.
No, I wish we could find a way because I said this to you before the recording. What I find frustrating is I would love to get my hands on that technology to play around with it and try and build really useful tools with it. Nothing malicious. I would have a
Yeah.
bit of fun with it, let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wouldn't do anything malicious. I just want to build like some cool apps with it and try and do stuff. But the counter to this is you now have these technologies relegated to like Mark Zuckerberg instead of the masses. So what's safer? One wealthy individual controlling these models, and yeah, they build them so they can control them. But
Yeah, and it's funny because I saw a comment during the week that I didn't think much of when I saw it, but as I've reflected on it, I think it's quite good. And it was saying that really, why are we letting the companies in this scenario control the ethics? Because if you think about it, right now, the only people enforcing things like not safe for work filters or you can't do these filters are the companies themselves. Like they're not under any pressure that I know of to do that. I think they're doing it out of prudence, like not wanting to get themselves in hot water and get regulated and shut down, which is why they're proactively doing it. But really, right now, all the rules are not coming from governments and they're not coming from independent bodies or representatives of the people. They're coming from the companies themselves.
it's like school kids in a playground, like just making up rules of a game. That's what
Yes,
I think it is
it's a
right
good
now. Yeah,
analogy.
they're just like, you can do this, you can't do this. This is what's happening. Well, self-regulation. You could just argue that is self-regulation better than the government regulating, but there's some maybe examples of self-regulation working, but I don't know whether the direction is. Do you go
Well, and
that?
there'll always be someone else, assuming the open source in particular technology keeps going, there'll always be someone else who can just have less ethics and do that. So something has to happen.
I read over
Or
the EU draft laws around regulating AI, and remember this started with Sam Altman being like, we want regulation, but if you do regulation, we're going to take ChatGPT away from you.
yeah,
But anyway, fast forward. Some of the concepts in it I actually really like, where you should know how AI is being used if it's going to process something that could change your life, like a mortgage application or a university admission or whatever it
I
is. Like
see.
you
That's a
should,
very good point.
and then looking at just unacceptable risk category of AI, where it might be used for like facial recognition or things that take away like your rights as an individual's and yeah, so like all the areas that they're actually proposing versus what was speculated don't seem that prohibitive towards innovating or continuing to develop these technologies. And it doesn't really cover anything like don't make an AI that'll extinct us or anything like that. It just touches on the here and now, like the misinformation and some of these things. I think the one challenge they're going to have, as we said earlier, is just like how do you enforce and police this stuff? It's similar to GDPR. It just led to a bunch of like pop-ups on websites. Like, do you agree that AI is bad? Yes. Like,
Yeah, yeah, and it only really comes into play when there's an actual breach and things like that. I mean, there has been some good definitely come out of the GDPR stuff, but you're right. It's mostly a sort of self-selecting, like, compliance sort of thing, and this one could have very serious ramifications, especially in those scenarios you just described.
So we also couldn't help but go. This actually came out. We missed this like 2 weeks ago. There's an app called Blush. It's by the team that made Replica, which is like this 3D friend on your phone that you can chat to, and you sort of create the perfect companion or whatever on your phone. And they've now released an app called Blush, which the best way to think of it is like a dating app. So you can like swipe left or right, like, hot or not kind of thing.
Yeah, but
And
with
then
bots.
connect with an AI and chat to it.
Who are they saying no to? Like,
I think if they're interested or not, and it's meant to, help you practice for dating apps, your conversation or something like that.
oh, right, I see. Okay, to sort of increase your chances of a response or something. I was lucky enough to not have to date during the period of Tinder and all of that
Yeah,
stuff,
the app generation, but
but I can imagine that there's a lot more males on there than females, and you've got to be interesting or engaging pretty quickly to get a response, right?
yeah, my guess is here with this app is it's just like I don't know if it's gonna be people practicing for Tinder. I think it's gonna be people like you
Making
know
them their real
falling
girlfriend.
in love with the AI and playing around with it because it's like fun and like you can have all that risk and with no fear of being rejected, right? Like there's no rejection here, so that whole thing goes away.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's right. Like, if you say something you didn't mean, you can absolutely take it back, no problem.
I think what's been surprising to me, especially with like the younger generations, is the prevalence of these the dating apps and chatting to AI, and just the novelty doesn't seem to have worn off. Like they really enjoy tinkering around with it and chatting to it, and they're just incorporating it into their entertainment. Like it's just a new form of entertainment interacting with AI that
Yeah,
we've
like, I
seen.
noticed that Simon Willison does that. He always gets it to speak like a pirate or something when it answers him, and, like I do it sometimes, you modify it to I had it one I said, "You have to refer to me as Mr. Bond," and so I forgot about it, and I was using it for something else, and it's like something, 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 Mr. Bond, and I'm like, "Oh, that's right," and it's just amusing, like, it's just genuinely amusing, and maybe that's what they're doing. It's like companionship, they're just asking it like Wikipedia style questions, but it happens to also be their girlfriend.
Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see. Do these apps take a lot of time away from, you know, not necessarily Tinder or those kind of dating apps, but do they take the attention away from TikTok and these other social apps? Like, is this going to be the next social app phenomenon where
Where,
you,
yeah, it's a bit more private and less social.
yeah, and what does that do to people's minds? Like, people already are seemingly like feeling lonely and disconnected and
Yeah,
horrible, and everyone's
I'm
like, "Oh,
gonna
don't worry, technology will bring us closer," but it seems to be actually making us feel further apart and worse about ourselves.
yes, I'm definitely gonna make the prediction it won't be a good thing. I don't think that it's going to be good,
And on
to
that
have
note,
everyone
we'll
chatting to
conclude
AI.
the show.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much to everyone that listens. If you like the show, please do leave a review, help us spread the word, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.